I think Eric DeCosta is sort of walking that line between, okay, what can we get in the short term that helps us now? Any way you look at it, they need a couple defensive pieces to be ready to play in that Bears game. With Robinson breaking his foot and already some holes on that defense with injured guys, you need to get at least one player, if not two, that can play for you that Sunday. But in a bigger scale, I don't think you trade for short-term fixes before you know what happens to these two games. Now, if it's a conditional 6 or something like that, whatever, that's not a big deal. But I'm talking about a legitimate asset for a short-term fix. I'm just not doing that at 1-5. Maybe at 3-5, yes, but not at 1-5. So that's why this stretch is critical in determining sort of their direction at the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it, if there is, and I'll go back to a guy like I'll use the proper name this time, Brian Burns, not Brian.
There we
go. That was one of those trades where I used to say this about the wide receiver position all the time, and I remember in 2020 harping on trading their first round pick for Stephon Diggs at the time, because I just kept saying, like, we've been trying to fix this position for years, and now they've hit on Zay. Rashad Bateman's been a productive player, so it's a little bit different after the fact. But I just want to see them go out and get a vet and that's proven. And that's kind of how I feel about the edge room right now, because the reality is we're in this situation with the edge room because everyone's focusing on Mike Green. But again, you look at guys like Owe, who he went and he did have a sack, but I mean, he beat a tight end on a bootleg. I don't really know why all these Chargers fans were excited, like they just got the second coming of Julius Peppers. But I've already said, let those Chargers fans get ready for the almost Owe show, because it becomes pretty disappointing pretty quick. And then you look at we're getting nothing from Ojabo. We've got Adisa Isaac hurt again. Like, all these guys that just haven't developed into what you expected them to be. Like, David Ojabo was supposed to be this souped up pass rush specialist that you could get on third down and doesn't have to worry about the run. He'd just get after the quarterback. And unfortunately, like, we just haven't been able to do that. So I have no issue with them going out and trading an asset to get a veteran. Yeah. It does cost you more. You don't get the cheap rookie years. You have to give up a draft pick. I get all of that. But, I kind of look back at the last few drafts and, like, this team loves draft picks, and I get why. You get more shots. Eric talks about that all the time when he gets ready for the draft. Obviously we want more comp picks. We get more shots to take. And like, logically, I understand it. But, if they have 9 picks instead of 10, I'm not going to fuss too much about it.
Yeah.
Again, I really don't want to necessarily, like, there's no way I'm giving up my first, not when you have a chance to be potentially picking in the top 10. And, I am 100% I'm against tanking. I think that's, I think it's a chicken shit attitude to have, to go in and purposely lose games. I think it breeds bad organizations. You should be trying to win every game no matter what. So, quote unquote tanking in a sense of we're going to get rid of all of our players and just play these young guys. That's a little bit different because you're not purposely trying to lose. I think people kind of confuse just being bad with tanking. But, I'm not for doing that, but I would absolutely look at kind of, like you said, not a short-term fix. If I'm adding an edge rusher and it's a guy I'm going to extend on a deal, that's not a move for this year. It's a move for the next 3-4 years, right? No issue with doing that. But I think you got to take a look at, if they lose one of the next 2 games, I don't know how much you'd get. You're probably looking at a late pick, but I'm sure a contender out there would love to have what they see from DeAndre Hopkins. I'm sure someone, might want to add Mark Andrews. Again, you're not going to get a 3rd, 4th round pick. You're probably looking at 5th, 6th, a pick swap later. But it's really about kind of preparing for, moving forward. Maybe you move on from Mark Andrews, give Kolar those snaps. You know what I mean? Like, kind of take a look at some different ways of doing that. So I guess all that to say, to kind of summarize, are the Ravens buyers or sellers? You can buy while at the same time making sure that is focused on the next few years rather than and like a guy, like, I kind of keep going back to it, but like Roquan Smith was a guy that, they'd been trying to figure out that inside linebacker position for a few years. And so they went out, they made the premium investment with a 2nd round pick for Roquan. They extend him, they give him a big deal. They kind of solved that through the vet. So that's kind of the approach I'm talking about with the edge rusher position. So is that something that you'd be down for?
Absolutely. Now, don't get correct me if I'm wrong, Cole, the Jalen Phillips and Chubb at Dolphins, who are kind of the two of the aren't they free agents? I think.
I
And
believe so.
isn't
They were the same draft class as
and
Owe.
isn't Kayvon Thibodeau a free agent as well?
I think he's the year after, so he would
Okay,
have
so
a
yeah.